We all know Legolas. He's the stoic archer, the graceful warrior, the one with the impossibly good eyesight. In a fellowship of loud dwarves, ponderous wizards, and existentially burdened men, he is a figure of quiet competence. He is the elven representative, a symbol of the ancient grace of his people, sent to aid the quest to destroy the One Ring. That's the story we're told, and it's a good one. It's clean. But here's the thing nobody talks about. Legolas volunteered to join the Fellowship, yes, but he never told them the full truth about why his father, King Thranduil, let him go. He never explained the desperate centuries-long war his people were fighting, the catastrophic failure that precipitated his journey to Rivendell, or the crushing political weight that rested on his shoulders. The official version of events presents Legolas as a simple volunteer, an individual moved by a noble cause. The truth, buried in the margins and appendices of Tolkien's world, is far more complex and far more interesting. What we're about to uncover is the story not of an archer, but of a prince on a secret mission, a story of political desperation, of a kingdom on the brink, and of a son carrying the unspoken burdens of his father. This isn't the story of Legolas the companion. It's the story of Legolas the diplomat, the intelligence agent, the living embodiment of his kingdom's last desperate gamble for survival. What if the quietest member of the Fellowship wasn't quiet because he had nothing to say, but because he was forbidden from saying the very things that mattered most? What if his silence was not a character trait, but a political strategy? To understand this, we have to look past the battlefield and into the throne room. We have to understand the map not just as a fantasy landscape, but as a geopolitical chessboard. And we have to ask a question that changes everything. What was really happening in Mirkwood? The answer reframes the entire quest, and it turns one of its most straightforward characters into its most tragically burdened. This journey will show you that the greatest battles are not always fought with arrows and swords, but with secrets and silence. And that sometimes the heaviest things we carry are the truths we can never speak aloud. Let's begin where the official story does. At the Council of Elrond, our representatives of the free peoples of Middle-earth have gathered in the hidden valley of Rivendell to decide the fate of the One Ring, which Frodo Baggins has brought from the Shire. Legolas is there. The text of The Fellowship of the Ring introduces him with simple elegance. A strange elf, clad in green and brown, who has come bearing tidings of great sorrow. He stands and speaks. He announces that the creature Gollum, who had been held prisoner in his father's realm, has escaped. He explains how it happened, how Gollum was allowed out under guard, how he refused to come down from a high tree, and how a sudden assault by orcs allowed him to slip away in the confusion. He concludes his report with a somber, self-effacing line: "We have failed in our hope to cure him, and now he is gone." And that's it. That is the sum total of his stated purpose in Rivendell. He is a messenger delivering bad news. A short while later, when the Fellowship is formed, Legolas volunteers. "I will go," he says, "and I will be a representative of the elves." Elrond accepts, and Legolas Greenleaf, son of Thranduil, becomes one of the 9 walkers. On the surface, this is perfectly logical. The elves, as one of the great races of Middle-earth, should have a presence on this quest. Legolas is a capable warrior, a prince of a noble line. His inclusion feels natural, almost inevitable. This is the version of the story we all know, the one presented in the films and in the main narrative of the book. It's a story of unity, of different races putting aside their differences for a common cause. Legolas is the elven archetype, ancient, wise, skilled, and a little detached. He is there to shoot orcs with deadly precision, to see things others cannot, and to offer cryptic, beautiful-sounding observations about the fading of the world. He is a functional character, a vital part of the team, but we are rarely, if ever, invited into his inner world. His motivations are assumed to be as pure and straightforward as his aim. He is there because it is the right thing to do. But this clean, simple narrative is a carefully constructed facade, and Legolas himself is its primary architect. The story he tells the Council is true in its facts, but profoundly deceptive in its omissions. He presents the escape of Gollum as an unfortunate accident, a sorrowful failure. He doesn't mention the immense strain of guarding the creature in the first place, or the political capital his father expended by even agreeing to do it. He doesn't speak of the centuries of darkness and war that have bled his kingdom almost to death, a war fought in isolation, without aid from the lords of Rivendell or Lothlórien. He presents himself as just another elf, not as the heir to a throne that is teetering on the edge of a precipice, a kingdom whose very survival depends on the outcome of this quest in a way that no one else at that council can possibly understand. The baseline we are given is that Legolas is a noble volunteer. The truth is that he is a refugee from a forgotten war, a prince whose presence in the Fellowship is an act of profound political calculus. He is not there just to represent the elves, he is there to represent his elves, the sylvan elves of Mirkwood, and to ensure their story does not end in silence and shadow. To understand the first layer of complication, we have to ask a question the Council of Elrond seems to gloss over entirely. Why was Gollum, the single most important living source of intelligence on the One Ring, being held in a fortress deep inside the most dangerous forest in Middle-earth? Why was he given to Thranduil, the notoriously isolationist and xenophobic king of the Woodland Realm? The answer begins not in Mirkwood, but with Gandalf and Aragorn. After his long and arduous hunt, Aragorn finally captured Gollum and, knowing the creature could not be allowed to roam free, brought him to Gandalf. But what to do with him? He was too slippery for a dungeon, too important to kill. Gandalf needed a jailer he could trust, someone with the resources to hold a creature of supernatural cunning and malice, and someone located far from Mordor. He chose Thranduil. The books tell us that Gandalf had begged Thranduil to keep Gollum in ward. Begged. This wasn't an order or a simple request among allies. It implies a negotiation, a plea. Gandalf was asking an immense favor of a king who owed him, or anyone else, very little. Thranduil's kingdom, the Woodland Realm, was not a peaceful sanctuary like Rivendell or a golden, timeless haven like Lothlórien. It was a bulwark, a fortress kingdom on the front lines of a secret war. For 1,000 years, the shadow of Dol Guldur, the Hill of Sorcery, had been growing from the southern end of the forest. Dol Guldur was Sauron's forward operating base, a place from which he directed the corruption of the woods and projected his power northwards. Thranduil's people were not singing songs under the stars in blissful ignorance. They were fighting a brutal, grinding, centuries-long guerrilla war against giant spiders, orcs, and darker things, a war of attrition that had slowly pushed them further and further north, forcing them to build their halls in a fortified cave system for defense. They were besieged. So, into this precarious high-stakes environment, Gandalf asks Thranduil to accept the single most dangerous prisoner in the world, a prisoner whose mind is a direct link to the enemy, a creature who whispers the secrets of the ring in his sleep. This was not a simple favor. It was a catastrophic security risk. Thranduil would have known this. He was no fool. He was a veteran of the War of the Last Alliance, where he had seen his own father, Orifer, and 2/3 of their army slain in a reckless charge against Mordor. That trauma defined his entire reign. It taught him a bitter lesson. Alliances are costly, and the outside world brings only death and sorrow. He retreated, pulled his people deep into the forest, and resolved to weather the storm alone. So why would this king, this battle-hardened isolationist, agree to Gandalf's plea? He had nothing to gain and everything to lose. Taking on Gollum was an act that put his entire kingdom in the crosshairs. Sauron would want the creature back. An attack was not a possibility. It was a certainty. And yet he agreed. This decision, which happens off-stage before our story even begins, is the key. Thranduil did not accept this burden out of the goodness of his heart. He did it because he had to. He was politically isolated, his kingdom was weakening, and he knew that the great storm of the War of the Ring was coming. He could no longer afford to stand alone. Taking Gollum was a political chess move. It was a way of buying back into the game, of re-establishing his relevance with the White Council, with Gandalf, Elrond, and Galadriel. It was a way of saying, "We are still here, we are still fighting, and our fate is tied to yours." But it was a move that came at a terrible cost. When Legolas stands before the council and announces Gollum's escape, he is not just reporting a mishap. He is announcing the failure of his father's great political gamble. The very asset that was meant to bring Mirkwood back into the fold of the great powers has been lost. The shame and the political fallout would be immense. Legolas's sorrow is not just for a failed task. It is the sorrow of a prince watching his kingdom's last best hope for a secure future vanish into the darkness. To truly grasp the weight on Legolas's shoulders, we must look deeper at the figure who cast that shadow. His father, Thranduil. The character we meet briefly in The Hobbit is a caricature, a greedy, stubborn elf king obsessed with treasure and wine, who imprisons Thorin's company for trespassing. It's easy to dismiss him as a minor antagonist, a flawed and short-sighted ruler. But that is a Hobbit's eye view of a monarch whose history is far more ancient and tragic than Bilbo could ever comprehend. Thranduil is a survivor. He is one of the Sindar, the Grey Elves, who in the First Age chose not to complete the journey to the Undying Lands. And, unlike Elrond or Galadriel, he has no ring of power to preserve his realm. His kingdom's strength comes from spears, arrows, and sheer, stubborn will. More importantly, he is a veteran of the last great war against Sauron. He was there, at the end of the Second Age, on the slopes of Mount Doom. He fought on the Dagorlad, and he watched his father, King Orifer, lead their people in a glorious but strategically disastrous charge. Orifer, impatient with the supreme command of Gil-galad, attacked before the main host was ready. He and the majority of his army were cut down. Thranduil survived, but he inherited a throne, a shattered army, and a searing lesson in the price of pride and the folly of foreign entanglements. This event is the psychological key to his entire reign. His subsequent retreat into Mirkwood was not an act of cowardice, but a deeply pragmatic, if cynical, response to trauma. He saw the great alliance of elves and men defeat Sauron, only to watch men fail to destroy the ring and the world slide back toward darkness. From his perspective, the outside world was a graveyard of broken promises. His policy of isolationism was a survival strategy. He would defend his own borders, protect his own people, and let the rest of the world sort out its own messes. For 3,000 years, this strategy more or less worked, but the world was changing. The shadow in southern Mirkwood that was once a mere nuisance grew into the fortress of Dol Guldur. The necromancer was revealed to be Sauron himself. The forest grew sick, and the borders of his realm became a perpetual war front. Thranduil was holding the line, alone. The elves of Lórien and Rivendell, protected by their rings of power, lived in relative peace, their lands shielded from the passage of time and the encroachment of evil. Thranduil had no such magic. His kingdom was mortal in a way theirs was not. It could bleed, it could shrink, it could die. This is the king who Gandalf asks to imprison Gollum. A king nursing a 3,000-year-old trauma, ruling a kingdom under siege, deeply suspicious of the very allies who now needed his help. His decision to accept is therefore monumental. It signals a complete reversal of his foreign policy. It is an admission that his isolation has failed, that the darkness in his own backyard has become too great to fight alone. He is swallowing his pride, his cynicism and his fear, and making a strategic choice. He is placing a bet. He is betting that by taking on this burden, he will earn a seat at the table when the fate of the world is decided. He is betting that the aid he provides now will be remembered and reciprocated when the war comes to his own borders, and then the prisoner escapes. The bet is lost. The orcs who attacked during Gollum's escape were not a random patrol. They were a targeted assault sent from Dol Guldur, or perhaps even Mordor itself. Sauron knew where Gollum was, and he came for him. The attack proves that Thranduil's kingdom is not secure, that his greatest fears have been realized. His act of re-engagement with the world has brought the enemy directly to his doorstep and resulted in a catastrophic intelligence failure. And the shame would have been unbearable for a king as proud as Thranduil. The political damage, incalculable. He has proven himself an unreliable ally. So what does a proud, cornered king do? He cannot go to Rivendell himself. That would be an admission of utter failure, a king begging for help. Instead, he sends his son, his heir. Legolas is not just a messenger. He is a living symbol of Mirkwood's commitment. His presence is a carefully crafted piece of political theater. He is there to smooth over the failure, to absorb the blame gracefully, and, most importantly, to ensure that despite the loss of Gollum, Mirkwood is not forgotten or abandoned. Now let's zoom out from the characters and look at the map. The geography of Middle-earth is not just a backdrop, it is a driver of history and politics. And the location of the Woodland Realm is arguably the most strategically precarious of any of the great elven domains. Rivendell is nestled in a hidden valley, protected by Elrond's power and the natural defenses of the Misty Mountains. Lothlórien is a golden heartland, shielded by the power of Galadriel and her ring, Nenya, a realm existing slightly outside of normal time. But Mirkwood, or Greenwood the Great as it was once known, is on the front line. Look at its borders. To the west, the Misty Mountains, teeming with goblins. To the east, the plains leading toward Erebor and the Iron Hills, a region of constant conflict and shifting alliances. And to the south, its true nemesis, Dol Guldur. For the entire Third Age, Thranduil's kingdom has shared a border with Sauron. Imagine living next door to a fortified cancer. A place of pure evil that actively corrupts everything around it. The very trees of the forest grew dark and twisted. Ancient paths became overgrown and treacherous. The air itself grew heavy with malice. This was not a fairy tale forest. It was a war zone. The creatures Legolas fights alongside the Fellowship, orcs, wargs, and worse, are not abstract evils to him. They are the things that have been killing his people for centuries. His skill with a bow was not honed in peaceful target practice. It was born of necessity, of endless patrols through darkened woods, of desperate skirmishes on a constantly shifting frontier. He is not a prince from a tranquil paradise. He is a soldier from a kingdom under occupation, his quiet, watchful demeanor his ability to move silently, his preternatural awareness. These are not just elven traits. They are the survival skills of a people who have lived under constant threat for generations. When he walks on the snow in Caradhras, leaving no footprints, it is presented as a piece of elven magic. But think of it as a tactical skill, the learned lightness of a forest scout for whom silence means the difference between life and death. The sylvan elves of Mirkwood, the common folk of Thranduil's realm, were a simpler, more rustic people than the high elves of Rivendell. They were more in tune with the wild woods, and also more vulnerable. Thranduil and his Sindarin nobles ruled over them, trying to preserve a sliver of the ancient elven way of life in a world that was actively trying to choke it out. Their entire existence was an act of defiance. They fought a war that no one else saw or acknowledged. While the great lords of the West deliberated in their councils, Thranduil's elves were bleeding and dying in the dark. There were no epic poems written about their struggle. No songs were sung in Rivendell of the nameless archers who fell holding a line against a tide of giant spiders. They were forgotten. And this is the context Legolas carries with him. When he sits in the Council of Elrond, surrounded by the lore and high magic of the Noldor, he must feel an immense cultural and political distance. Elrond speaks of the ancient lineage of kings. Glorfindel is there, a hero reincarnated from the First Age. They are relics of a glorious past. Legolas represents a bloody, uncertain present. He represents a kingdom that is not preserved by magic, but by the grit and courage of its soldiers. His people are not scholars, they are survivors. He cannot speak of this. To do so would be to sound desperate, to complain, to reveal the weakness of his kingdom. It would be a diplomatic disaster, and so he remains silent. He presents his news with a stoic grief, hiding the raging political firestorm it represents. He allows the other lords to believe his kingdom is more or less like theirs, ancient, strong, and secure. He plays the part of the serene elf, because the alternative is to confess that his home is on the verge of being swallowed by the very shadow they are all there to discuss. His presence is a performance, and the stage is the future of his people. With this context, the traumatized king, the besieged kingdom, the catastrophic failure, we can finally connect the dots and see the true nature of Legolas's mission. Thranduil's gamble with Gollum has backfired spectacularly. He is now in a weaker political position than ever before. He has proven that his kingdom is vulnerable and that he is an unreliable custodian of the West's most valuable intelligence asset. He risks being cut out of the loop entirely, left to face the coming storm alone, just as his deepest fears have always warned him he would be. He cannot allow this to happen. So he sends Legolas to Rivendell, not merely as a messenger, but as a political operative. Legolas has 3 unspoken objectives. First, damage control. He must deliver the news of Gollum's escape in a way that minimizes the political fallout. Notice how he frames it. He emphasizes the sorrow and the failure of their hope to cure him, turning a security breach into a compassionate tragedy. He takes the blame upon his people with a quiet dignity that discourages further inquiry. He performs his duty so gracefully that no one thinks to ask the hard questions. How could your patrols be so easily overcome? What does this say about the security of your realm? He absorbs the failure, and in doing so protects his father's honor. Second, intelligence gathering. Legolas is there to be his father's eyes and ears. Thranduil needs to know what the great lords of the West are planning. What is their strategy? Who are the players? What is the fate of the ring? Isolation is no longer an option, so Thranduil needs information, and he needs a trusted source. Legolas, his own son, is the only one he can rely on to report back without the political spin of an outsider. He is a listening post in the heart of the enemies and his allies' council. And third, most crucially, secure a place for Mirkwood in the New World Order. This is the end game. Thranduil knows that the destruction of the One Ring will change the balance of power in Middle-earth forever. Sauron's fall will also mean the fading of the three elven rings. The power of Elrond and Galadriel will diminish. The age of men will begin. In this great reset, Thranduil needs to ensure his kingdom is not left behind. He needs to forge new alliances to prove Mirkwood's worth. When the Fellowship is formed, a path to achieving this third objective opens up, a path so risky and so audacious that only a desperate king would take it. He allows his son, his only heir, to join a suicide mission. From a father's perspective, this is a terrifying decision. But from a king's perspective, it is a masterstroke. By embedding Legolas in the Fellowship, Thranduil inextricably links the fate of Mirkwood to the fate of the Ring. His son is now at the epicenter of the defining event of the age. Mirkwood can no longer be ignored. The kingdom's contribution to the cause is not an abstract promise of future aid, it is the life of its prince, offered up daily. Every arrow Legolas fires in defense of the Fellowship is an arrow fired in defense of his homeland's political future. His bravery, his loyalty, his skill, all of it accrues to the credit of Thranduil's kingdom. He is a walking, breathing advertisement for the value of Mirkwood as an ally. He is building political capital with every step he takes toward Mordor. And still, he must remain silent about all of this. He cannot tell Aragorn, "My presence here is to ensure my father has a strong negotiating position with you after you take the throne of Gondor." He cannot tell Gandalf, "I am here because my father doesn't fully trust you and needs his own man on the inside." He cannot tell the others of the centuries of lonely warfare his people have endured. He must maintain the fiction that he is simply a volunteer, an individual acting out of pure nobility. The psychological burden of this must have been immense. To be surrounded by companions, yet to be fundamentally alone in his purpose, to fight alongside them, to laugh with them, to grieve with them, but to always be holding back the true weight of his mission. His quietness is no longer just a personality trait. It is a necessary act of political discipline. It is the silence of an ambassador, the discretion of a spy. Let's imagine a scene, a moment that is never described by Tolkien, but which must have happened. It is the night before Legolas is to depart for Rivendell. He stands before his father in the great stone halls of the Woodland King. The air is cool and smells of earth and damp stone, a fortress built to keep the sickness of the forest out. Thranduil's throne is not carved with flowing grace like Elrond's chair, but with the hard, defiant lines of a king at war. His crown is of woven branches and leaves, a reminder of the woods they are losing. "You know what you must say," Thranduil might begin, his voice low, not meeting his son's eyes. "You will tell them of our failure. You will bear their judgment." Legolas nods, his face impassive. "And what will I not say?" Thranduil looks up then, and in his eyes is the cold fire of 3,000 years of memory and loss. "You will not speak of our weakness. You will not tell them of the war we have fought in their shadow. You will not speak of the cost. Let them think our woods are still golden. Let them believe we are as strong and serene as they are. Pride is all we have left, my son. Do not surrender it." He might stand and place a hand on Legolas's shoulder. "They will decide the fate of the ring, and in doing so, they will decide our fate. Whatever they choose to do, you must be a part of it. The age of our people is ending. The power of the three rings will fade. Lórien and Rivendell will become as common as our own woods, but the age of men is rising. Gondor will have a king again. You have seen the heir of Isildur. Befriend him, and let him see the quality of the elves of the wood. When this is all over, he will remember that the son of Thranduil stood by his side, and he will not forget our kingdom when the new maps are drawn. In that moment the mission is laid bare. It is not about Gollum. It is not even truly about the ring. It is about survival. It is about Thranduil, the traumatized survivor of the last alliance, ensuring that his people are not left behind by the tides of history as they were once before. Legolas is not just carrying a message to Rivendell, he is carrying the entire future of his people on his back. When he steps out of his father's halls and into the twilight of the forest, he is stepping into his role not just as a warrior, but as the custodian of his people's legacy. Every choice he makes from that moment forward will be weighed against this secret directive. His loyalty to the Fellowship will be real, his friendships genuine. But underneath it all, there will be the constant humming pressure of his father's mandate. His allegiance is divided, not between good and evil, but between his companions and his kingdom. This is the uncomfortable truth at the heart of his character. He is a hero, yes, but he is also a profoundly political creature, navigating a web of allegiances that no one else in the Fellowship can even see. His journey is not just a physical one across Middle-earth, but a tightrope walk of diplomatic tension, a performance for an audience that doesn't even know it's watching a play. And the price of a single misstep is the oblivion of his home. And so we arrive at the core realization, the pivot point where the story of one elf becomes a story about all of us. Legolas's silence is not emptiness, it is weight. The weight of an unspoken history, of a secret war, of a father's desperate command. He is the quiet friend in the group who carries a universe of trouble behind his calm expression. He is the colleague who performs their job with flawless competence while their private life is in turmoil. He is the representative of any nation or people who must present a brave face to the world while hiding the cracks and fears that threaten to shatter them from within. His journey with the Fellowship is an act of profound, lonely heroism that is never acknowledged because it is never known. While Aragorn struggles with the burden of his lineage and Frodo struggles with the physical burden of the ring, Legolas struggles with the invisible burden of political duty. He must be a perfect friend and a perfect soldier, all while serving as a perfect instrument of his father's foreign policy. This reframes every interaction he has. When he clashes with Gimli, it's not just the ancient animosity between elf and dwarf. It's the clash between a dwarf from a wealthy, resurgent kingdom and an elf from a besieged, declining one. Thranduil had imprisoned Gimli's father, Glóin, and the memory is fresh. But for Legolas, that conflict was about protecting his borders from what his father saw as reckless intruders. He cannot explain this. He can only engage in the surface-level banter and rivalry. When he stands in Lothlórien, he is not just an elf visiting his kin. He is a prince from a gritty, war-torn realm standing in a magical, ethereal sanctuary preserved by a ring of power his people do not possess. He must feel a mix of awe and perhaps a quiet resentment. Galadriel and Celeborn have maintained this perfect, timeless realm while his people bled to defend the dark woods to the north. Yet he shows only reverence and respect. He plays the part. Perhaps his most telling moment is his gaze into the distance, his ability to see for miles. We take it as a simple elven superpower. But now see it as a metaphor. He is constantly looking ahead, constantly scanning the horizon, not just for orcs, but for the political future of his people. He is playing the long game. His vision is not just physical, it is strategic. This is the burden of representation. To stand for something larger than yourself is to surrender a part of your own individuality. You become a symbol. Your words are not your own. They are the words of your people. Your actions are not your own. They are the actions of your nation. Legolas embodies this silent sacrifice. He is a warm and loyal friend to his companions, but there is a part of him that is forever held in reserve, a part that belongs to his father and his kingdom. He walks with them, but he also walks alone, trapped in the silence his duty demands. This is a form of heroism we rarely celebrate. It is not the heroism of a grand charge or a noble sacrifice on the battlefield. It is the quiet, grinding heroism of carrying a weight that no one else can see, of maintaining your composure while your heart is breaking for your home, of serving a cause that is more complex and less pure than the one your friends believe they are all fighting for. Legolas, the seemingly simplest member of the Fellowship, becomes the most politically and psychologically complex. He is a portrait of the loneliness of command and the crushing weight of history. This realization echoes far beyond the pages of a fantasy novel. It touches a fundamental human truth. We all misread silence. We project our own assumptions onto the quiet people in our lives. We assume their silence is a sign of simplicity, of agreement, of disinterest, or perhaps of a serene inner peace. We rarely consider that it might be the product of immense restraint, a deliberate act of withholding a truth that is too heavy, too complicated, or too painful to share. Think of the immigrant who doesn't speak of the country they left behind, not because they have forgotten it, but because the story is too large to be contained in casual conversation. They perform the role of the new citizen while carrying the ghost of a past world within them. Think of a family leader navigating a secret crisis, an illness, a financial struggle, who must attend holiday gatherings and smile and pretend that everything is fine, because to tell the truth would be to burden everyone else. Their calm is a shield, their silence a service. This is Legolas at the Council of Elrond. This is Legolas sharing a piece of lembas with Pippin. He is present, he is kind, he is a friend, but his soul is elsewhere, tethered to a besieged forest kingdom and a grim, calculating father. His performance is flawless. This reframing of Legolas asks us to become more curious about the quiet spaces in our own lives, both in others and in ourselves. What are the stories we don't tell? What are the duties we perform in secret? What part of our identity is a performance for the benefit of others, a necessary simplification of a much more complex inner reality? The weight of an unspoken truth can be heavier than any physical burden. It isolates. It creates a subtle but impassable distance between you and the people you love most. You can be in a room full of friends, laughing at a shared joke, and feel a profound sense of solitude because you know that your reality is fundamentally different from theirs. You are operating on a different level, playing by a different set of rules. This is the bittersweet tragedy of Legolas. He finds true friendship, true belonging, within the Fellowship. His bond with Gimli, in particular, becomes one of the great stories of interracial friendship in all of literature. But even that friendship is built upon a foundation of omission. He can love Gimli, he can fight beside him, he can even travel with him to the Undying Lands, but he can never fully explain the political calculus that put him on that path in the first place. His heroism is therefore twofold. He is a hero for what he does, for his courage and skill in battle. But he is also a hero for what he doesn't do. He doesn't complain, he doesn't reveal his kingdom's weakness, he doesn't burden his friends with his secret mission. He carries it all silently, and in doing so, allows the Fellowship to maintain its pure, uncomplicated sense of purpose. He absorbs the political complexity of the world so that they can focus on the moral simplicity of their quest. It is an act of profound and invisible grace, and so we come to the end of our journey. We look back at that familiar figure, the elf prince standing under the trees of Rivendell, and we see him now not as a simple, graceful archer, but as a figure of immense political and emotional depth. We see a son carrying out the desperate, last-ditch foreign policy of his traumatized father, a soldier from a forgotten war sent to represent a kingdom that the world believes to be a peaceful forest realm, but which is in fact a fortress holding back the dark. We see a diplomat and an agent whose every action and word, and whose every silence, is a carefully calculated move on a geopolitical chessboard. His presence in the Fellowship is not a matter of chance or simple goodwill. It is the culmination of 1,000 years of history, isolation, and struggle. It is Mirkwood's final, desperate bid for a place in the world that is to come. This understanding doesn't diminish his heroism, it deepens it. It makes it more real, more human. His loyalty to the Fellowship is made more profound by the fact that it is set against a backdrop of a competing, hidden loyalty to his home. His friendship with Gimli is more beautiful because it transcends not just race, but the secret political agenda that Legolas is forced to carry. He succeeds in his mission. Not just the Fellowship's mission to destroy the ring, but his own secret mission. Through his bravery and loyalty, he builds the alliances his father could not. He befriends the future king of Gondor. He helps to save Middle-earth, and in the process, he secures the future of his people. After the war, we learn that he brings elves from his kingdom south to Ithilien to help heal the land ravaged by Mordor. It is a political act as much as it is an act of grace, a demonstration of Mirkwood's value to the new reunited kingdom. He has fulfilled his father's mandate. What does this journey mean for us? It means that history is often shaped by the things that are left unsaid. It is a reminder that the simplest seeming stories often conceal the most complex truths. It teaches us that true strength is not always loud. Sometimes it is the quiet endurance of a burden that no one else can see. The quiet heroism of holding the line both on a battlefield and in your own heart. We began by asking what Legolas was hiding, and the answer is he was hiding the weight of the world, at least his part of it, the forgotten, besieged, and desperate world of the Woodland Realm. So the next time you watch the films or read the books, pay attention to the quiet elf. Watch him when he is not speaking. See his stillness not as emptiness, but as a profound act of control. See his far-seeing gaze not as a mere superpower, but as the watchful eye of a prince burdened with a secret duty. And perhaps ask yourself, who are the silent heroes in my own life? What unspoken histories and unseen burdens are they carrying? What great acts of loyalty and love are being performed in the quiet spaces just beyond our notice? The world is full of them. We just have to learn how to see.